Since antiquity, marijuana has always carried an aura of mystery and duality. Ancestral cultures revered it as a sacred plant, capable of opening the gates of perception and expanding consciousness. However, among the invisible layers of spirituality, there are those who warn about the dangers of its use. After all, to what extent can a substance that alters mental states also interfere with energetic fields, attracting entities of low vibration? Is marijuana a vehicle for enlightenment or an open door to dense energies that take advantage of altered states? And more, how can we differentiate responsible and ritualistic use from consumption that weakens our connection with higher planes? Are there spiritual evidences pointing to the hidden risks or benefits of this plant? Throughout this text, we will dive into the various facets of marijuana within the astral world, discussing whether it can truly attract obsessive spirits or, under the right conditions, act as a shield for the soul. Could the key lie in conscious use? Since the earliest times, plants have always been seen as bridges between the earthly and spiritual worlds. Ancient civilizations, such as those of India, Egypt, and China, understood that certain herbs not only possessed healing properties for the physical body but also had the ability to impact the soul and the subtle levels of existence. Marijuana was no exception. Historical documents and oral traditions indicate that this plant played an important role in religious rituals and esoteric practices, being considered a gift of nature for spiritual elevation. In Hinduism, for example, cannabis is associated with the god Shiva, the destroyer and transformer. In specific rituals, it was consumed to help devotees transcend the illusions of the material world, achieving a state of divine union. Indigenous tribes of the Americas, in turn, used the plant in ceremonies of healing and connection with the spirits of nature. But what did these cultures have in common? They all believed that the use of marijuana needed to be ritualized, treated with respect, and guided by clear intention. Without this, its effects could be unpredictable or even dangerous. But why was this plant seen as such a powerful tool? One possible explanation lies in its impact on the mind. Spiritually, the mind is considered the filter between the physical and astral worlds. When perception is altered, as happens with marijuana use, the barriers separating the subtle planes become thinner, allowing the individual to access realities beyond the everyday. This can be an opportunity for expansion, but also a risk of exposure to negative energies. The history of cannabis is marked by this duality. While some traditions viewed it as a channel for enlightenment, other cultures warned of the dangers of improper use. In ancient Middle Eastern mysticism, texts suggested that cannabis could open spiritual doors, but these doors did not always lead to the light. The danger lay in the lack of preparation and absence of energetic protection, conditions that could attract obsessive spirits or low-vibration entities. Modern spiritualism reinforces this idea, stating that certain substances, like alcohol and drugs in general, can weaken the auric field. If this is true, marijuana could, depending on the circumstances, function as a bridge to spiritual inspiration or as a hole in the individual's energetic protection. Have you ever wondered whether we are prepared to deal with the consequences of this opening? An intriguing example can be found in shamanic traditions. For shamans, the plant should only be used under the supervision of an experienced guide, someone capable of navigating the spiritual realms and protecting the group from external influences. In this context, marijuana was seen as an ally, but never as something trivial. This sharply contrasts with modern casual use, often devoid of any awareness or preparation. A crucial point that deserves attention is the environment in which marijuana is consumed. The ancients believed that the space where the plant was used needed to be purified, protected by prayers, mantras, or specific chants. Without this care, the vibrations of the place could mix with the user's energy, creating an environment conducive to the manifestation of negative forces. How often does modern consumption take such precautions into account? Another important issue is purpose. For spiritual masters, intention directs energy. Using marijuana as a means of escaping reality not only prevents spiritual elevation, but also weakens the bond between the body, mind, and spirit. On the other hand, using it as part of a meditative process, with focus and respect, could bring valuable insights and even catalyze processes of emotional healing. However, even among those who seek conscious use, there are debates about the plant's limits. Some spiritualists argue that marijuana can become a dangerous substitute for genuine spiritual work, creating a dependency on the substance to reach elevated states. Wouldn't this ultimately weaken the very essence of the seeker, who should find these connections through their own inner strength? It is interesting to note that, despite the entire spiritual history linked to cannabis, many contemporary religions completely reject it, associating it with sin, laziness, or an escape from responsibility. This rejection is not new. For centuries, marijuana has been the target of persecution and campaigns to discredit it. But is this a legitimate reaction to its spiritual dangers or an attempt to control tools that facilitate freedom of thought? Furthermore, it is impossible to ignore the influence of modern culture on marijuana use. The plant, once surrounded by rituals and reverence, is now often consumed in unrestrained environments, frequently associated with excess and the relentless pursuit of immediate pleasure. In such a scenario, does it still carry the same spiritual force it once held in the hands of priests and shamans? Looking at the historical context, we can see that the relationship with marijuana has always been shaped by the intentions of those who used it. The same principle can be applied to the present day. Ritualistic and conscious use is still a possible practice, but it requires a deliberate effort to recover ancestral wisdom and adapt it to the spiritual needs of the present. Finally, it is worth reflecting. If so many cultures saw marijuana as a powerful spiritual tool, why do we treat it so casually today? Are we losing an opportunity for learning or simply exposing ourselves to unnecessary risks? When we consume any substance, whether it is food, drink, or a plant like marijuana, we directly impact our energetic field. However, few substances have the potential to modify personal vibration as profoundly as cannabis. This alteration occurs because marijuana affects not only the mind but also the auric field, which serves as an invisible shield that protects and connects humans to spiritual dimensions. But how does this vibrational shift actually happen? And what are its consequences in the spiritual realm? Science has already proven that cannabis interacts with the endocannabinoid system, regulating functions such as mood, memory, and perception. However, spiritualists see beyond the physical. They believe this interaction also interferes with the individual's energetic tuning, altering their vibrational frequency. When a person consumes marijuana, it's as though their energetic field changes stations, becoming more receptive to frequencies that would not normally be accessed in a regular state of consciousness. This can provide an opportunity to access spiritual insights, but it can also create openings for lower vibration energies. Imagine for a moment the human energy field as a kind of filter that separates the physical world from the spiritual. This filter is designed to protect the soul from external influences while allowing healthy interaction with subtle planes. However, by using marijuana, this natural barrier can be weakened, depending on the person's emotional and mental state. Obsessive spirits, for example, are thought to be attracted to unstable energy fields, which emit confusing or dense vibrations. Could this be one of the reasons why many spiritual traditions caution against the indiscriminate use of mind-altering substances? On the other hand, some argue that marijuana amplifies the existing vibrational state. In other words, a person with elevated intentions and a balanced energy field might use the plant to deepen their connection with higher realms. However, are most people emotionally prepared to handle this kind of amplification? And what happens to those who already carry emotions like fear, anger, or anxiety in their energy field? An essential point to consider is marijuana's impact on the chakras, the body's energy centers. Many spiritualists believe that cannabis primarily affects the crown chakra, located at the top of the head, which is the main channel of connection with the divine. In an altered state, this chakra may open uncontrollably, enabling expanded perception but also leaving the individual vulnerable to external influences. Additionally, imbalances in other chakras can lead to feelings of disorientation, loss of focus, and difficulty grounding oneself in reality. Another frequently overlooked aspect is the environment in which marijuana is consumed. Just as with spiritual practices like meditation or shamanic rituals, the space where an altering substance is used plays a crucial role in the experience. Environments loaded with dense energies, such as wild parties or places with a history of negativity, can amplify the user's vulnerability. Could this explain why so many people report disturbing experiences or feelings of heaviness after using marijuana in certain contexts? The vibrational shift caused by cannabis can also affect how we interact with our own thoughts and emotions. When consumed, the plant often brings repressed issues from the unconscious to the surface. This can be a healing process, but it can also be overwhelming for those unprepared to confront these revelations. How many people, when faced with their own fears and inner shadows, feel trapped in a cycle of anxiety. Do these dense emotional states create an entry point for negative energies or entities? Many spiritualists warn that, by altering one's vibrational state, marijuana can also interfere with the individual's relationship with the astral plane. The astral plane is like an intermediate world between the physical and the spiritual, inhabited by energies and entities of various vibrational levels. An unbalanced or unprepared mind accessing this plane might attract obsessive entities or even astral parasites, which feed on dense emotional vibrations like fear and confusion. Conversely, those who use marijuana with elevated intention report experiences of expanded consciousness and access to profound insights. Many describe visions, intuitive messages, and even feelings of unity with the cosmos. This suggests that the vibrational shift caused by the plant is not inherently negative, but depends on the user's internal state and preparation. Wouldn't this mean the issue lies less in the plant itself and more in how we approach it? Another important consideration is the frequency of marijuana use. Continuous consumption can permanently destabilize the energy field, making it difficult to return to a natural vibrational state. This can lead to a feeling of disconnection, where the individual begins to feel that they need the plant to access states of well-being or balance. But isn't it dangerous to rely on something external to sustain our own vibration? Interestingly, some esoteric schools argue that marijuana's impact on vibration is amplified by the purity of the substance. A plant cultivated with care, in harmony with nature, would have a different energetic effect compared to one grown in mass production, with chemicals and in disharmonious conditions. In this sense, the cultivation process itself may determine whether the plant carries a high or dense vibration. Are we disconnecting from this dimension when we consume marijuana without considering its origin? Ultimately, marijuana seems to act as an amplifier of our vibrational frequency and intentions. If the internal vibration is high and consumption is guided by spiritual purpose, it can become a tool for expanding consciousness. But without preparation, intention, or balance, the same process can weaken energetic protection and expose the individual to spiritual risks. The choice, as always, is in our hands. Finally, it is worth reflecting. Are we truly ready to deal with the vibrational changes that marijuana provokes? Or are we underestimating the complexity of its interaction with our energy fields? Intention is considered the core of all spiritual practice. It is the invisible energy that guides our actions and shapes the outcomes we achieve, whether in rituals, meditations, or the use of consciousness-altering substances like marijuana. But how does intention connect to the spiritual impact of the plant? Is merely thinking positive enough to prevent dense energies from approaching? Or can irresponsible and unprepared use of cannabis create openings that even the best intentions cannot seal? According to universal laws, like attracts like, this means that a person's emotional, mental, and vibrational state will determine the type of energy or entity they attract. When marijuana is used with an elevated purpose, such as introspection, meditation, or spiritual seeking, the vibrations emitted by the user are more likely to align with higher planes. However, when consumption occurs recklessly, in a context of emotional escapism or as an attempt to mask internal problems, the vibrations may align with denser frequencies, creating space for obsessive spirits to approach. Obsessive spirits, according to Spiritism and other spiritual traditions, are disembodied entities that remain tied to their earthly passions. Many of these spirits are attracted to people who share their vibrations or behaviors. When a mind is under the influence of marijuana, especially in states of emotional vulnerability, its energy can become more accessible to these entities, creating a sort of open door for their influence. But does this mean that everyone who consumes cannabis is automatically vulnerable to obsessors? The answer is not so simple. The role of intention is deeper than it might seem. Beyond being a mental directive, it acts as a vibrational force that structures an individual's energetic field. For example, someone who consumes marijuana in a protected environment, after engaging in mental or spiritual preparation, may avoid many of the risks associated with its use. However, those who use it without purpose, purely for fun or out of addiction, may lack the same energetic protection. Have you ever reflected on how your own intentions shape the energy around you? There is another point to consider. Intention does not act alone. It must be accompanied by a disciplined mind and a balanced heart. In the case of marijuana use, Many spiritualists believe that the plant amplifies the internal state that already exists. If someone is emotionally unstable, full of doubts or fears, cannabis may bring these feelings to the surface intensely, exposing the individual to astral attacks. On the other hand, a focused and peaceful mind can use the same plant to access dimensions of self-knowledge and spiritual inspiration. Isn't the real danger, then, the internal state of the person consuming it? Another decisive factor is the environment in which the substance is used. Obsessive spirits tend to concentrate in low-vibration places, such as unruly parties, bars, or spaces marked by emotional conflicts. When marijuana is consumed in these settings, the person's auric field may be directly influenced by the energies of the environment. It's like swimming in a polluted river. No matter how clean you are, you will inevitably be affected by the surrounding filth. Doesn't this make us question whether conscious consumption should also be accompanied by a sacred and protected space? Additionally, the presence of others during marijuana use has a direct impact on the user's energy. When consumed in a group, the collective vibration can intensify both the positive and negative effects of the plant. For instance, in a group that shares elevated intentions and harmony, the combined energy field may repel dense influences. However, in a group where there are emotionally unbalanced individuals, the energy generated can become a magnet for obsessors and astral parasites. Have you ever wondered how the energy of the people around you affects your own experiences? Even with all these precautions, some spiritual specialists warn that intention alone may not always be enough. When marijuana is used repeatedly without a clear spiritual purpose, it may create an energetic tuning that consistently attracts certain types of entities. These entities, referred to as energy parasites, feed on the individual's life force, creating cycles of dependence and spiritual exhaustion. But how can one break this pattern if it has already been established? Complementary spiritual practices such as meditation, prayer, and energy cleansing can help rebalance the vibrational field and reduce the risks associated with the plant's use. Additionally, it is essential for the user to engage in honest self-reflection. Why am I using marijuana? Am I running away from something? Am I seeking something greater? These questions can reveal much about the impact the plant will have on one's energy and spiritual connections. On the other hand, there are accounts of people who have used marijuana to overcome emotional traumas or access profound spiritual insights. In these cases, the intention was clear: to seek healing and growth. Many of these reports come from ritualistic practices where the plant is consumed in meditative contexts, accompanied by music, mantras, or spiritual guides. Could it be that in such cases, the plant is serving as a catalyst for good? Even so, it is important to remember that responsible use requires self-mastery. Even in rituals, there is a risk of becoming overly dependent on cannabis as a spiritual crutch. This can weaken inner growth and lead the individual to believe they can only achieve elevated states of consciousness through the plant. Isn't this a subtle form of entrapment, even when the initial intention is good? In the end, it is undeniable that marijuana has the power to alter the energy of those who consume it, but the true impact will always depend on the balance between intention, preparation, and environment. The plant itself is neither inherently good nor bad, it simply amplifies what is already within us. This leads to an essential reflection. Are we truly ready to use such a powerful tool consciously and responsibly? Or are we playing with something we do not yet fully understand? The use of marijuana, especially in spiritual contexts, is surrounded by countless myths shaped over centuries by cultural, religious, and scientific beliefs. While some traditions exalt it as a divine tool capable of opening portals to perception and cosmic connection, others associate it with negative energies, dependency, and spiritual degradation. But where does the myth end and reality begin? And can science and spirituality complement each other in understanding the effects of this plant? From a scientific perspective, cannabis contains chemical compounds known as cannabinoids, with THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and CBD, cannabidiol, being the most studied. THC is responsible for psychoactive effects, while CBD is more associated with therapeutic benefits, such as relieving anxiety and pain. However, what science does not directly address is how these chemical changes in the brain might influence energetic and spiritual fields. Could the perception changes triggered by the plant have a vibrational counterpart, as suggested by many esoteric traditions? A common myth is that every natural substance is inherently beneficial, due to its origin in nature. While marijuana is undeniably a plant with potent properties, spiritual traditions caution that intention and context determine whether it becomes an ally or a threat. In occultism, for instance, it is believed that every plant has an energetic frequency, and that this frequency can either align with the users or amplify existing vibrations. Thus, consuming marijuana irresponsibly, without awareness or respect, can destabilize a person's energy rather than harmonizing it. Another frequent myth is that cannabis always expands the mind. It is true that many users report enhanced perceptions, insights, and even mystical experiences. However, these sensations do not always indicate genuine spiritual expansion. Some esoteric schools argue that in altered states, the mind can project illusions or create temporary realities based on the subconscious. What seems like a spiritual revelation may, in fact, be a reflection of internal emotions, fears, or desires. How can one differentiate between an authentic experience and a mental construct? From a scientific standpoint, there is an interesting explanation for this phenomenon. THC activates brain regions linked to creativity and emotional memory, which can generate unusual and intense associations. To spiritualists, this could be interpreted as a portal to the unconscious, where the user confronts hidden truths and shadows. However, if the mind is unprepared to deal with what it encounters in this state, the result may be confusion, anxiety, or even panic. Could this be the hidden risk behind the myth that marijuana is a guaranteed path to enlightenment? Another point of debate is the idea that marijuana opens portals. In the esoteric realm, this is often taken literally. The plant is thought to weaken the energetic barriers that protect us, allowing for more direct interactions with the astral plane. Scientifically, it is known that THC alters brainwave patterns, particularly by increasing alpha waves, which are associated with meditative and relaxed states. For many spiritualists, this more receptive brain state can indeed facilitate spiritual connections, but not without risks. If the portal opened by marijuana is not accompanied by protection or clear intention, there is a possibility of attracting dense energies or obsessors. The idea of spiritual dependency is also surrounded by myths and misunderstandings. While science classifies cannabis as a substance with low physical dependency potential, some esoteric traditions warn of the energetic dependency that frequent users may develop. This dependency occurs when an individual begins to believe they can only access elevated states of consciousness or emotional relaxation with the help of the plant. Doesn't this create a sort of spiritual crutch, where the user's inner power is transferred to an external source? Interestingly, there are cultures that view marijuana as a tool for spiritual healing, but with extremely restricted use. In shamanism, for example, some traditions employ the plant in specific rituals to help participants face emotional traumas or unlock spiritual blockages. In these cases, marijuana use is surrounded by preparation, fasting, and guidance from an experienced leader. Could the secret to balancing science and spirituality lie in reclaiming these ancestral rituals? Even so, some argue that marijuana, even when used ritualistically, can steal spiritual clarity over time. This is because, according to certain schools of occultism, accessing elevated states of consciousness without personal effort can weaken the willpower. In simple terms, it's like using a ready-made key, instead of building your own path to self-knowledge. The experience may be valid in the moment, but does what is learned truly endure in the long term? Science also raises an important point. The effects of cannabis are not universal. Some people have a genetic or psychological predisposition to adverse reactions, such as paranoia or a sense of disconnection from reality. In the spiritual realm, this could be interpreted as an inability to integrate the vibrations the plant induces, creating more disharmony than growth. Could marijuana, then, be a tool that should only be used by those with adequate emotional and spiritual preparation? Another rarely discussed aspect is the question of cultivation. Scientifically, it is known that the quality of the plant depends on factors such as soil, climate, and farming methods. In esotericism, cultivation is even more significant. It is believed that plants grown with respect and in harmony with nature carry a purer vibration, while those produced industrially, with chemicals or in negative environments, may harbor a dense energetic charge. Doesn't this make us question whether we are consuming the plant in its highest form or merely a corrupted version shaped by the modern world? Ultimately, what emerges from the interaction between science and spirituality is that marijuana is a powerful tool that requires respect, knowledge, and balance. While it can open doors of perception, it can also create illusions or attract negative influences. Its action on the physical body and the energetic field is interconnected, and ignoring either dimension may lead to an incomplete, or even dangerous, understanding of its effects. Wouldn't it be wise, then, to treat the plant with the reverence and care it seems to demand? While often associated with spiritual risks and the attraction of negative energies, there is another side to marijuana that few explore. Its potential as a spiritual tool for protection, consciousness expansion, and connection with higher dimensions. When used with purpose and respect, the plant is viewed by some traditions as a spiritual shield, capable of strengthening the energetic field and offering transformative experiences. But what makes cannabis a possible ally on the spiritual path? And under what conditions does it cease to be a risk and become a catalyst for light? For some ancestral cultures, such as the Rastafarians and shamans from various parts of the world, marijuana is considered a sacred plant imbued with its own spirit. This spirit is thought to be an intelligent force, endowed with natural wisdom, capable of helping humans in their search for balance and spiritual clarity. However, this force only manifests when consumption is ritualistic, with a clear purpose and in an energetically protected environment. Could the key lie in restoring the respect for the plant that has been lost in modern times? From an energetic perspective, marijuana has the potential to help balance the frequencies of the body and mind. Many people report that under its effects, they are able to deeply relax and temporarily free themselves from emotional and mental tension. This relaxation can allow for a reconnection with the inner self, creating space for spiritual insights. It's as if, by dissolving the barriers of the ego, the plant provides more direct access to the essence of the soul. But is this access available to everyone, or only to those who already cultivate continuous inner work? Moreover, spiritual practitioners who advocate for marijuana as an energetic shield argue that it can strengthen the third eye chakra, ajna, associated with intuition and spiritual vision. Under its influence, it is possible to access levels of perception that are normally blocked by the conscious mind. Visions, intuitive messages, and a sense of connection with the universe are frequently described by those who use the plant mindfully. However, these same practitioners caution that this potential is only unlocked when the user is in a state of emotional and mental balance. Otherwise, the visions may be mere projections of internal fears and anxieties. Interestingly, there are also accounts of marijuana acting as a catalyst for energetic healing. Some holistic therapists and shamans believe it helps release deep emotional blockages, which often manifest as physical illnesses or destructive behavioral patterns. For example, in healing ceremonies, the plant is used to induce states of consciousness in which individuals can confront past traumas and dissolve negative vibrational patterns. But is marijuana's healing potential truly in the plant itself, or in the individual's willingness to face their shadows? Another frequently mentioned point is marijuana's impact on the auric field. Certain esoteric traditions assert that the plant can temporarily expand the aura, making it more receptive to elevated energies. When used in protected rituals, this expansion can help individuals connect with spiritual guides or high-vibration realms. However, this expansion also increases energetic sensitivity, making it essential for the environment to be carefully prepared. Isn't this one of the reasons why ancient cultures always used chants, prayers, or incense before consuming the plant? Furthermore, cannabis is often seen as a plant that amplifies intention. Spiritual practitioners who use it in meditation or rituals claim that by concentrating on positive thoughts and clear intentions, the plant acts as a channel, intensifying the desired outcomes. For example, an intention for healing or peace can be deeply magnified, creating a resonance that affects not only the user but also the surrounding environment. This might explain why, in ancient traditions, marijuana was often burned as incense in collective ceremonies. However, positive use of the plant is not without its guidelines. The first step is internal preparation. Fasting, meditation practices, and mental stillness are often recommended before the ritualistic use of marijuana. These processes help purify the individual's energetic field, reducing the chances of the plant amplifying negative emotions or scattered thoughts. After all, how can we expect a plant to help us expand if we are not ready to handle what we might find? Another crucial factor is understanding the plant's origin. Many spiritualists warn that marijuana's energy can be influenced by how it was cultivated. Plants grown in harmonious environments, in connection with the earth, and without the use of aggressive chemicals, are believed to carry a higher vibration aligned with spiritual frequencies. Conversely, industrialized cannabis, produced on a large scale and often handled irresponsibly, may carry a dense energetic load that negatively impacts the user. Are we consuming the plant with the same respect and purity that ancient traditions held for it? The spiritual benefits of marijuana, however, are not guaranteed. Just as it can help with healing and expansion, it can also lead to stagnation and confusion. Everything depends on the context. An interesting example comes from Rastafarian practices, where the plant is called the herb of wisdom. For them, the use of cannabis is deeply tied to meditation and reading scriptures, considered a tool to draw closer to Jah, God. This demonstrates that when accompanied by an elevated purpose, the plant can become an instrument of connection with the divine. Ultimately, marijuana can serve as a spiritual shield when used with wisdom, respect, and preparation. It has the potential to amplify our intentions, facilitate connections with higher planes, and promote the healing of emotional blockages. However, its use demands responsibility. After all, the plant does not create spirituality. It merely intensifies what is already present in our energetic field. The question that remains is, are we ready to use it as a tool for expansion, or are we seeking shortcuts for the inner work that only we can accomplish? After exploring the multiple aspects of marijuana in the spiritual context, we arrive at the ultimate question. Is it a risk that weakens our energetic connection and exposes us to negative forces, or is it a powerful tool for expanding consciousness and raising vibration? The answer, as with many spiritual matters, is neither simple nor absolute. It depends deeply on how the plant is used, the emotional and energetic state of the user, and, most importantly, the intention behind its consumption. To better understand this dilemma, we must revisit a fundamental principle of esotericism: balance. Marijuana, like any spiritual tool, is neutral by nature. What determines its influence on the astral plane is how we use it. In other words, the plant is neither inherently good nor bad. It merely amplifies what we already carry within ourselves. Are we ready to face this amplification? Or are we still unprepared to deal with the internal truths that may emerge? One of the most pointed risks highlighted by spiritual scholars is the weakening of the auric field. As we've seen, the unregulated use of marijuana can create cracks in the aura, leaving the individual vulnerable to obsessors and energetic parasites. These entities do not necessarily invade the aura without permission. They are attracted by the vibrations we emit. Thus, dense emotions such as fear, anxiety, or anger can act as magnets, drawing these energies closer. Is the plant itself the issue, then, or does the emotional state of the user create this vulnerability? On the other hand, there are countless reports of individuals who have used cannabis as a tool for healing, introspection, and transcendence. In states of emotional and mental balance, the plant can act as an amplifier of positive intentions, helping the individual access higher levels of consciousness and promoting internal transformation. Many describe experiences of momentary illumination, where profound understandings about life, trauma, or purpose emerge with clarity. Could cannabis, under the right conditions, be an ally on the spiritual journey? However, a lingering question remains. Is this access to elevated states genuine or merely temporary? Some occultism scholars argue that marijuana offers shortcuts to expanding consciousness, but these shortcuts can be illusory. Because it does not require personal effort, such as meditative practices or spiritual discipline, the use of the plant may generate fleeting experiences that do not sustain long-term growth. This raises an important reflection. Does relying on external tools distance us from the genuine inner work we need to undertake? Another critical point is the role of frequent consumption. While some traditions use marijuana sparingly and ritualistically, continuous use can lead to energetic dependency. This dependency is not limited to the physical but also extends to the emotional and spiritual. When we become accustomed to using the plant as a key to access states of peace or insight, we begin transferring our spiritual responsibility to an external agent. Isn't this a risk of losing control over our own evolution? Even so, it would be unfair to ignore the accounts of emotional healing associated with cannabis. Many people claim that in states altered by the plant, they have accessed repressed memories, processed past traumas, and released emotional pain they had carried for years. These experiences can be transformative, especially when accompanied by structured therapeutic or spiritual work. However, without proper guidance, this emotional openness can also be overwhelming, leaving the individual confused or burdened. Are we prepared to handle the depth of emotions that cannabis can bring to the surface? There is also the issue of cultural and social impact. We live in a world where the consumption of psychoactive substances, including marijuana, is often trivialized. The plant, once surrounded by rituals and reverence, has come to be used without clear purpose, often in contexts of emotional escapism or uncontrolled recreation. Are we losing the opportunity to reclaim the conscious and sacred use of cannabis, as ancient cultures once practiced? From a spiritual perspective, the use of marijuana requires responsibility on 3 levels: intention, environment, and internal preparation. Intention must be clear and aligned with an elevated purpose. The environment must be protected and purified, free from dense energies that could interfere with the experience. And internal preparation should include practices like meditation, prayer, and energetic alignment to ensure the individual is in balance before consuming the plant. Without these elements, the use of cannabis may become an unnecessary risk, exposing the user to negative influences. Finally, we cannot ignore the role of self-awareness in this discussion. Marijuana, like any substance or spiritual practice, is merely a tool. Its impact depends on what we carry within ourselves, our fears, intentions, and hopes. If we are willing to look within with honesty, the plant can serve as a powerful mirror, reflecting our deepest truths. But if we use it as a means of escape, it may only reinforce the patterns we are trying to avoid. And so, the spiritual verdict is not definitive. Marijuana can be both a risk and a tool, depending entirely on how it is used. Its energy is neutral, but our interaction with it shapes its influence in our lives. The question each individual must ask themselves is, am I seeking true growth or merely shortcuts to spirituality? Marijuana, a plant that has sparked fascination and controversy for centuries, remains one of the most enigmatic tools in spirituality. Its potential for healing, connection, and expanding consciousness is undeniable, but so too are the risks of exposure to dense energies and spiritual obsessors. Everything depends on the balance between intention, environment, and internal preparation, 3 pillars that determine how it will impact the body, mind, and spirit. So now, I ask you, what other spiritual topics would you like to explore here? Leave your suggestions in the comments and help shape future content for the channel. If you're interested in diving deeper into spirituality, I've specially selected a few videos full of profound knowledge and fascinating discoveries for you. Just click on one of them. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-discovery and spiritual learning. Your commitment to knowledge is the first step toward transforming your reality.